As many of you may know, Hurricane Francine is currently making landfall right here in Louisiana near the New Orleans region. However, this is not the only system we have going on in the tropics at the moment. Right now, we have numerous disturbances all around, some of them being more of a low chance of formation, but we do currently have a tropical depression out here, 7, which is on its way and currently forming itself into a cyclone. We also have another disturbance out here near the coast of Mexico, which we'll also look into. Besides that, we also are looking at severe weather for tomorrow, the tornado risk, wind, and hail out there in Montana. Hi, I'm Palmy, and we'll today be looking at what I've just mentioned, hurricanes and severe weather. So regarding Hurricane Francine, as I said, I won't go too far into this. We talked about Hurricane Francine. It was at the time Tropical Storm Francine. This was, on the last video I talked a lot about this, but currently it's creating a pretty big flash flooding threat. You see a moderate risk has been issued here with a few other slight risks in the rain department, mostly for our Tennessee, Alabama, this vicinity right here. But for today, especially Louisiana is going to see a lot of flooding, especially with that Mississippi River Delta right there. That should be a decent issue for in that regard. And the tropics, again, Francine, that is at this point pretty old news. Most people know about this already. Tropical Depression 7 is what I'm mostly in at the moment. Here I have deep layer wind shear basically over the this is over the North Atlantic, so 7 is kind of right. If you can imagine, these are our boxes. It's right about at 30 west and be right around here. Here's 7. Label it right there. That's 7 right there. And that's where it's trying to form. You can see a little bit off the map, but you can see very little shear this is dealing with. Clicking on wind shear here, that's so very favorable for intensification. Upper divergence. Actually, I'm going to move my sector just to get a better spot for this. Give me 1 second here. We'll move to the sector here over the East Atlantic and see if we can see our area better. So here's Africa and 30 west, and we go to about, it says 16 and a half. So right here is our area, our tropical depression. Regarding wind shear, that will be moving into an area of better wind shear. You can see currently it is, kind of surrounded by a lot of wind shear, but it should be in a pretty favorable region. Lower convergence here is there is some conversions right where you want it. Vorticity 850, you can see right there again. There's that vorticity. Actually, a few levels of the atmosphere as well, going almost all the way up to 200 a little bit there, mainly 500 to the surface at this point. Again, upward divergence right in that region. So we do have a lot of rising motion taking place. This is right off the monsoon season from Africa. These ICTV I believe it's the tropical. I forgot the name of it, what it stands for, but that's a convergence zone here off of right along the tropics and the Tropic of Capricorn. So that is currently kind of forming up, and a lot more information is listed here. This is soon to become a tropical storm, which is forecast. They don't seem to think this is going to be strengthening any further than that. Likely, again, because this is a very narrow column of wind shear that is favorable for hurricanes and tropical storm formation right in that vicinity. Again, you can see how very narrow that is. Regarding our surface pattern, let me pull up the GFS model so we can see what's going on way out there in the ocean. We have, kind of this dominant high pressure ridge. Not very strong, but it is somewhat situated here, kind of off the coast of Morocco and the Portuguese islands here. I forget the name of them, but these owned off of the coast of Morocco here in northern Africa. There is this high pressure ridge. I'll draw it in right here. There's your high pressure, and this is going to be kind of slowly aiding these this depression to move to the west. You can see that pretty well right here. Kind of slow movement towards the west, and a little bit north as well. There's Cape Verde there as well. That should be our main driving force in that regard. The GFS will probably intensify it because that's what it likes to do quite often. We can't see the GFS wants to intensify this and make it a very strong hurricane, but for the most part, with these beginning days, you can see it's slowly moving on to the west, maybe intensifying in the future, but as of now, this doesn't, NHC does not forecast this to be strengthening at all. Regarding our other disturbances, for the most part, they're also in that area of lesser wind shear. I'll move, reload this page here. Go back to our tropics view, back to the North Atlantic here again. Wind shear. See, there is this pretty nice area here of very little and very favorable wind shear. But again, it just depends on what our 500 millibars does, what these other systems are up to. And it is important to keep in mind there's going to be this troughing going on somewhat close to any systems that would want to form, so they might become more like fish storms. Just kind of set out there in the ocean. It also seems to be forecast for a stronger ridge to kind of go into place right here near off the Caribbean eastern coast of the United States over here. And this could kind of damper any of the formations out here. Another thing I wanted to look at, if we can, actually I don't think this has it. I was gonna look for moisture conversions, but unfortunately GFS does not have that, so I can't look any further at that cyclone that was attempting to. But and there's tropical depression 7. The GFS doesn't even seem to show any intensification of those other ones. These disturbances here, and especially also this one off the coast of eastern United States. I think actually that one. There's nothing the GFS wants to form that one. Yeah, tropical depression 7 is the main thing to look out for regarding the tropics. Also, there is this 70% chance of cyclone formation out here near Mexico. Let me pull up the online NOAA GOES viewer here. I'll look at Mexico for simplicity. I can kind of show what's going on the satellite itself. Let me get a radar loop. There's these. Let me see. Working. There we go. All these storms out here, basically right off the coast of Mexico. And these are starting to intensify and taking on a slight spin. Not very strong at the moment, but there's a slight spin. So they do have this 70% chance of cyclone. Here it is. 70% chance of cyclone formation, actually in the next 48 hours as well. That could be, that could pose a risk for maybe areas along the west coast of the United States, which is something to look out for. Again, I'll look at the GFS model because I'm curious about this one. Let's see. Yeah, so the very warm waters off the coast of Mexico. The GFS shows this again. It'll always show it intensifying. The GFS does like to intensify hurricanes and tropical cyclones. And you can tell with how intense it looks like they wanted to make Francine here. In that other storm out there, Tropical Depression 7. You can see here again that cyclone goes right there on the coast of Baja California, and then it goes inland a little bit before weakening out and obviously being like a depression. Maybe bringing some heavy rainfall into this region. So that is something to look out for. There is this possibility of cyclone formation, and considering our upper air pattern, we do have this trough going on, so that will be pulled up north pretty quickly. So we might see a lot of heavy rainfall in areas you wouldn't usually expect to see that. Regarding that trough, actually, that is going to be our severe weather kicker for tomorrow. So I'm currently recording this on the 11th, and for tomorrow we're going to be looking at this little three-way risk, I like to call it. So, all hazards, hail, wind, and slight tornado risk as well. Or marginal tornado risk, but small tornado risk. I'll close out of our tropical sectors just for some sake. So the RAP model, if we go to the contiguous US, again, you have this trough, which is actually currently producing a little bit of severe weather. I believe we have a marginal risk out. It looks like it's for wind and hail. Also, not to mention, there is this tornado risk out here regarding Francine and how that might become a tornado risk. Maybe could intensify in the future as well. I'll check it out real quick just so I can go over the tropics and finish that off. But there is a lot more Cape being kind of brought in from Francine here. Not to mention plenty of vorticity. There should be a lot of vorticity with the fact that this is a tropical cyclone. But you can see on this map, lots of 3 Cape being affected. The region is important to mainly actually look at MU Cape. Possible Cape going up to about 1,500 joules per kilogram. I'll say a sounding right here, kind of in triple. I wouldn't call it the triple point, but if you look at a surface map, you can have that warm sector right there. I'll take one right in the middle of that. And honestly, what's interesting about this system is that Francine is currently being sheared out, meaning that supercells on the next day could be possible. Looking at this, this QT is very, very nice QT. It's a very moist layer, almost very grungy. So probably wouldn't be easy to see these storms, but there's that low-level shear. SRH is about 100, so not over the roof, but again, there is that SRH kind of in there. A decent photograph, especially with how much forcing will be going on. This is a very strong low pressure, don't forget that. I believe Francine currently is actually way lower in pressure than this is showing, while that the pressure will rise over time, this is much lower than we currently have. So somewhat of a supercellular photograph here from the Francine storms. That could be very interesting to take into account, just because again, usually hurricanes don't have tornadoes. I mean, besides, they have tornadoes, but not the supercellular tornadoes that we're used to. More so spin ups from little bands within the outer bands of the hurricanes. But this one's very more interesting because of how much shear there is, even with a hurricane. So, and definitely something to look out for that southeast region. Again, for tomorrow, we're going to look at the slight risk in the north. Let's zoom in. Actually, I'll stay in the big sector for our synoptic scale stuff here. 100 millibars, as I said, that big old trough, and this will be taking on a negative tilt throughout the day. You can see that the axis of tilt would be somewhat in here. That's your negative tilt right there, kind of leaning back towards the west. That's your negative tilt. And then we also have this divergence aloft. This is the 500 millibar level. See our winds are diverging. You have this area here, a little removed from our risk area actually. So our risk area is a little more to the west, but nonetheless, definitely some level of divergence going on. And if we just go back a few hours again, you can see that divergence happening. The trough is also pretty cold core, so this could be somewhat of a thermodynamically forced system, which is important to note. I'll look for shortwaves now. Also, there's a shortwave going on right there. Let's see. Possibly right here is a little bit of a shortwave. You can see the enhanced flow ahead of it and slight kinks in the contour lines. That could be our shortwave, possibly forcing some of these storms to move forward a little bit more. Possibly another shortwave in there, and there's a lot of little ripples, but it doesn't look like there's a very well-defined shortwave at the moment. For the most part, it seems like a very heavily sheared environment for all of this. Regarding the surface, and you can see pretty quick surface low development right off the Rockies here. About 992 millibar low. This will move on to the east, kind of northeast a little bit. The dew points will be injecting their way into the region, but not super duper strong. So these could be more elevated storms that are going on. But you can see these dews are kind of a little band of higher moisture right here. That sector. What is this sector? A little band of moisture right there. That could be a main forcing for this. Where's our moisture converging? Seems right along that band as well. Then later on too, that might be convectively enhanced, so I wouldn't be careful with that one. This could be also just be the cold front back there. And mass convergence could be dry lines as well. Let's see here. A little bit of a semblance of a dry line right here. There's not very good moisture for the most part, especially with the higher terrain. A sounding there. I guess I'll take one here. I'm going to look what the HRRR is saying as well. Here's what it's seeing. So this is very elevated convection, but the profile does look somewhat supercellular. Again, SRH is not through the roof, but at least the wind profiles are a little bit curved. You have that backing with height. Not as much cape as you'd like to see, so a lot of this would be getting lost, and these storms wouldn't be very powerful. It's a strange photograph. Where's this at? That's in that other band. So these could be more of our north-moving supercells, and these are also interesting. And surface to 3 kilometer SRH is at 250, not the surface to 1 kilometer, but SRH is somewhere around 250. Not really any 3 cape, so maybe the tornado threat might be dampened, but it's possible we'll have some nice supercells for this system. We are in the higher elevations too, not to mention the fact that there's not too many dew points, or the moisture is not very strong in this region, so we could have some very high base storms. Cape, and Cape does not look to be super duper powerful either, while the better photographs are probably out there towards North Dakota and South Dakota. The storms just aren't going to form. It's not good for what you want to see. Let's check the HRRR just to see what our storms do. With some sort of convection forming, maybe backbuilding squall lines right here, but those don't seem to have a very strong wind damage threat. It's possible they extend this a little bit. Oh, they do have a slight extent towards the South Dakota region for these storms, but they don't look to be super duper strong. Yeah, I think the issue is there's enough SRH for them to put up that 2%. Look at updraft helicity. HRRR is a few of these rotating some, especially the southern one actually, which is interesting. They don't have STP, which I don't like to look at too much. Occasionally I'll just pull it up like that. Supercell composite, same thing. It's just a parameter, but gives a little bit of a view. Not super strong forcing for everything. SRH, that's interesting. Let's check that. little more SRH up here. Northern storms, 1 kilometer SRH, not very much to be heard of at all, which is again noted. So interesting setup. For the most part, just kind of a band of storms somewhere around here. I think around 21Z, I believe, right with that moisture that moisture convergence right there. The cold front kind of setting up here. That low is behind there, so yeah, kind of that occluded front right there could be the main force. So somewhat of a cold core setup, especially because these are more thermodynamically forced. It looks like rather than. I mean, there is also a lot of strong flow aloft. Don't get me wrong, but these could be more thermodynamically forced with this colder air aloft. Although the colder air again isn't really encroaching into the region too much. And again, that 850 millibars, there is a little bit stronger flow right on that occluded front that will be formed. So we'll see how that goes and what that could mean. For the most part, that's our slight risk. Looking further into the future, I'll look at the GEFS, which is the United States here. We have this big old trough, and it looks like another trough ejection later on in the week. As we noted in the last video, kind of this high pressure here and low pressure here, a strange kind of occurrence that could help to push the tropical, what will be post-tropical Francine, kind of just creating lots of rain over here. Yeah, the ensemble GFS is very much in agreement of a lot of troughing for next week. This is about over a week from now, actually. I would say our last point in this run is probably 12C, where you do have a very negatively tilted trough right here over the Dakotas and Minnesota. That could be something to look out for the future. Especially, again, you don't know how that'll play out, and Cape is always questionable. The ensembles do seem to want to put direction into there. Yeah, so that'd be interesting to look at. Again, that lots of troughing possible. See how that plays out in the future, but I would say it's too early to tell. The SPC definitely agrees with that. Lots of potential too low, and then into next week, there's that predictability to possible large scale trough that should be there on Sunday. So there's that Sunday trough, and then the next day on Wednesday, that's their area of interest. That's what they're looking at for the future. So I'll keep updates in the future, and if anything comes out of this and we're seeing anything that could form, I'll make a video about it. But otherwise, that's it for this one. Thanks for watching. Thanks for the recent support. I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.